Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for being here in Portland, Oregon right now. It's gorgeous. We've got sunshine. First time in a few days. It's been rainy, so I was out enjoying the sunshine. If you're in this area, I hope you were too. Before I get started, let me thank my wonderful sponsors at Five Star Guitars. They are based in Oregon as well, so there's no sales tax. So you can get great deals on guitars and repairs and lessons, and an even better deal if you go to fivestarguitars.com/allaccesslive. If you punch in the promo code access15, you're going to get 15% off everything you see on that page. So again, fivestarguitars.com/allaccesslive and enter the promo code and you're going to save a bunch of money. And again, no sales tax. So shop local, save some money, and become an amazing guitarist. Get lessons from people like Jennifer Batten, Michael Jackson's guitarist, who also teaches virtually through Five Star. So I also want to thank Audix Microphones, also based in Oregon. They are a world-class guitar instrument and microphone company. I share these microphones from Audix as well as this headset. And if you go to audixusa.com, let them know that All Access Live sent you. I'd appreciate it. They'd appreciate it too. It's good to shop local. Now, before I get started, I have to tell you just a bit about my friend BRIANA Borten. And we all need this right now. We need an escape. The world's crazy, and somehow BRIANA's found a way to find some peace and serenity in this crazy world. She shares a lot of this information. She's done this for a long time, but right now I get to share it a little behind the scenes with you. So ladies and gentlemen, please welcome BRIANA Borten. How are you doing, hon?
Great. How are you?
I'm fantastic. I love seeing you.
I love seeing you too.
You have sun. You have sun coming through your window. I see.
So much sun. Never. There's never no sun here.
In Boulder, well, you've got sun and snow. Is there snow right now?
No, just sun.
Okay.
A lot
good.
of sun.
That's what brought you there. Is that what kept you?
It was. It's what brought us here, and now I'm like, oh, so much sun.
Yeah, and so I didn't mention earlier, but you and I grew up in Montana. You're a Helena girl.
That's right.
I think we may have met long before I remember meeting you, as you were working at Yatsen's restaurant, my favorite Chinese restaurant.
That's right. I was the hostess with the mostest there for sure.
How long did you work there?
I worked there all through high school, so 4 years.
Okay. Long enough to know that's the job you never wanted to have again, right?
I mean, I liked it actually.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really like working in restaurants. Even still, my husband and I will be out at a restaurant. I mean, not recently, but in my lifetime. And I'll be at a restaurant. I'll be like, ooh, this would be a really fun place to work. I wonder if they're hiring. He's like, you have a different job.
Yeah, well, I think after you've worked in a restaurant for a while, you appreciate wait staff. You understand the hectic nature of preparing meals and having to be of service, right? So it's I think it's a great job for anybody because I think they'll treat people in the restaurant industry a little better.
Yeah. I'm always like, oh, they are in such a hurry. Get your order out.
Actually, Lisa Schroeder, who's the owner of Mother's Bistro. Do you remember Mother's in Portland?
Yeah. Yeah. So good.
Right now with the pandemic, they've been shut down, and she's got a really great positive outlook on the way to support the community and not have to worry about, I guess not worry. She's not struggling with the mental part of being shut down. So I'm excited for her to share that stuff too, because it's important for people that are business owners to know, okay, we got to stick together. We'll get through this thing. And so with that in mind, as I sort of prepared things for you, we can go back a little bit in time, but I wanted to tell you, and I said this before we hopped on air, I think it's amazing to me that you've developed this way of communicating generosity and gratitude and kindness, in a world that seems crazy right now. You found a way to bring peace and love to people. So is this something that originated a long time ago? Is this something that you've had in you that you felt like you wanted to share with people?
I mean, I would say it's developed over time. I don't know that I have, I look back and like when I first started the spa, and I'm like, I don't know that I was the best communicator, especially as a boss. And, that's developed over time. I started really young, but I actually reached out to a friend on Facebook who was the best friend of my boyfriend in high school. And we just like, he was like, friended me, and I was like, hi. And he responded and he said, you know what I remember about you the most is that you were always happy.
Mm.
And I was like, that's funny. You know what I remembered about you is that you never liked me. Like I never
Oh.
liked me. And he was like, you were always happy. Like no matter what happened, you were always the one trying to get everyone to kind of like rile together and get along and all the things. And so I do think that some of it is just kind of my nature to be, I have a pretty positive outlook on life. I also had a major car accident when I was 18. I broke my neck, and I think that gave me even more perspective. And then it just has developed since then, through a lot of spiritual practice, a lot of personal development, and also I feel like business as personal development, which it usually is if you're doing it right. So
Right.
all those things.
Well, you mentioned the car accident and said that previously when you were, started your business, you may not have been a great communicator. After the car accident, did you find that you sort of developed a spiritual practice, a connection with sort of a higher power or something like that? Is that sort of where that originated?
Yeah, I mean, it started a little bit younger than that even. So my parents got divorced when I was like 7 or something. I don't know. They got separated and then divorced. I don't actually know when that happened. But my stepmom came into my life when I was 10 or 11, and she gave me when I was 12 the book The Tao of Pooh. Have you read that book?
No.
So good. It's still such a classic.
Okay.
So she gave me this book. And I read it for some reason. I don't know. I wasn't like a huge book reader even at that time. And so I read The Tao of Pooh, and it was really my first introduction to spirituality. My parents had both left their religion. So my grandparents were very religious, but my parents were like not into it.
Okay.
And so they didn't really give us much of that. And so this introduction to spirituality via my stepmom was really kind of the first opening I had to like, oh, there's something more here than just it's either Catholicism or nothing.
Oh, yeah.
And so that was a really big opening for me. And then, when I got into my car accident, I guess I feel like it really was what shifted my framing around how to be in life as like, oh, you could die. Like really any second. Like there's
Right.
no guarantee that you're going to like live into old age, or even at that point, I mean, I was 18, like I had no guarantee to live till I was in my 20s.
Right.
So to be like, then what do I want to do? Right. And that was really what sunk in for me. Like, if that's the case, what do I want to do with this life? Because I only have right now for sure. So I would say that was like the biggest thing that changed for me via the car accident. And then from that, I also got a lot of energy work because nothing else could help me with my pain. I was always in so much pain. And I started seeing an energy worker, and she just created miracles for me. And so I became really big fan of energy work, really wanted to do that. And from there, I think that my path really started even more.
You dropped out for just a second, and I'm so sorry about that. But you said that you were working with an energy worker.
Yes.
And that opened
just the doors to, the healing world. I was really in the art world before that. I mean, if you can even say I was in any world besides high school, but my plan was to go to art school, and that's what I was going to do. And I very much love art still. But that really opened up the door to, energy work and massage, and really started me on this path.
Oh, it's funny because, when I first met you too, we talked a lot about design and aesthetic. And one thing that was remarkable to me is that Portland was pretty saturated with massage and spa, like sort of locations, but there was something really special about what you created. And the experience that you walked in and you felt so warm and so nurtured when you walked into that space, the smells and the aesthetic and the treatment. So I would imagine some of that came from your interest in art, but also, that energy work that you did. The energy was different when you walked into the Dragon Tree, for sure. And I guess, so knowing that you worked with an energy worker, it's interesting for somebody that might not be spiritual at all. I think the idea of having spirituality oftentimes get sort of lumped into a religious kind of tone, right? And for somebody who was raised Catholic and I was an altar boy, I ran from a higher power kind of ideal because A, I'm a control freak, and B, I thought I wanted to reject, the hypocrisy and everything that I saw in the church. But it's only been the last handful of years that I've found spirituality in a lot of different places, in nature, especially in the forest and in the ocean, and on stage. And really, I mean, that's where I feel this energy that's a crazy, unexplainable thing. And being, that's part of the thing. It's unexplainable, right? You can tell somebody how you feel from that experience, but unless they go through it, unless they're willing and they actually experience this on their own, you just can't describe it, right?
Right.
So, but you do a great job of communicating and describing this because you've gone way beyond just a business owner where you started the Dragon Tree. And maybe let's talk about your journey. Let's talk about from Montana, what started you on this path of opening the spas and going, international or national and Jen Rankin says, "Hi, Brianna." I don't know. So yeah, let's go back to from after high school, after you started working with the energy worker and the broken neck. Let's go from there to now, if you don't mind.
No problem.
All right.
So yeah, I broke my neck in a car accident. So I moved. I was graduated high school. I was off to art college. I was so excited, and then I missed my stupid boyfriend. Got in a car and drove back to see him at like 10 o'clock at night from Washington to Montana. It was a horrible idea. I mean, it really turned out well in the big scheme of things. So maybe it was the best idea I've ever had. I don't know. But we were driving back. I got in a car accident. And then from there, just like so many things really switched and changed in the way I wanted to be in my life. I really decided, that sense of like, what do I want to do? What do I want to do with this life? Because I was all set to go to college. It was kind of the way I was planning on going. And I realized actually the one thing I don't want to miss is going to Europe. I was like, I just really want to go to Europe. I know I really want to go there. I knew someday I would. And I was like, well, I'm not guaranteed any some days. So I took the money I had saved for college and went to Europe. I was like, that's what I'm going to do with this money instead. And when I was in Europe, I met this sweet man named Brent in the Czech Republic in this little tiny town, Český Krumlov. He was running a hostel there. Even getting there was kind of a magical experience. But I ended up at this little tiny hostel, and I met this guy, Brent, who was just the most darling. He's just the sweetest guy. And we fell in love, and I ran the hostel with him there for like 9 months. And then we traveled throughout Europe, and it was just this very sweet experience. And then my sister was having a baby. So I was like, I have to go back to the United States because I have to meet that baby. I've always been a little baby crazy.
Yeah.
So we came back to the United States and didn't know where to go after my sister had her baby, because apparently she didn't actually want me around that much, weirdly. So we were like, where do we go? And we decided to move to Portland, which was such a great move for us. And I remember I was working at a head shop on Hawthorne, Nomad Crossing, for anyone who remembers Nomad Crossing. I worked there. And I remember one day I turned to my friend Shannon, who was working with me. Well, 2 different times. I was like, I'm going to become a massage therapist. That's what I'm going to go do. And so I looked up the school and I was enrolled the next day. And then the other day I was like, I'm going to become a belly dancer. So I also became a belly dancer that same way. And so that's really what got me into doing healing work, doing massage. And eventually I was working at a spa where I met my darling husband, Peter. And I loved working at the spa, but I always had all these ideas. I mean, I always think I'm right? Like everyone else. So I was like, I have all these good ideas. We're going to make it so great. And I was always telling the boss, Sarah, she's lovely. I was like, this is what we should do. This is what we should do. This is, and she was like, stop.
Get your own spot.
Yeah, exactly. That's basically what she said. She was like, get your own damn spa. So I did. I decided I would open a spa, and I actually started it with a business partner. We did not get along. It was not good. We were like not talking even by the time the doors opened. It was so sad.
Well, that's tough. That often happens, right?
It was so bad.
Which we can tie into in a moment, but that's why running a business with your life partner is a little tough too, right? So, for a lot of people, so,
Yeah.
Okay. So you met Peter at the spa that you were working at, Brent didn't
Yeah.
come over from the Czech Republic with you. Oh, he did. Okay.
He did. We moved to
Okay.
Portland together. We lived in Portland.
Gotcha.
We broke up, and then he moved back to
Oh,
Indiana.
Indiana from Prague.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. No, that's where he lives
All
now.
right.
I think.
Yeah. All right.
I
So you
don't know.
met Peter. You decided to open your spot. Dragon Tree was the first. That was the opening. Okay. And
Yeah.
so for people that know Portland, man, it's unbelievable. Up at like 26th and Thurman, right? The beautiful area up in Northwest Portland. If you've not been there, you've got to go. But there are other places to visit of the Dragon Tree besides there. But I'm telling you that one of the highlights of coming to Portland is this amazing experience. So when you first opened, right, you had developed a network of friends that sort of coached you. I know that you talked about getting ideas about, how to get certain product or certain accoutrement to design your spa. All right. So that spa in the place that it's at, real estate is not cheap, and you spared no expense. It was unbelievable to me.
Oh, I spared so many expenses at first, though. You have no idea.
Well, yeah, I mean, really, it was unbelievable how well designed it was.
Yeah, we had zero money when we opened. I mean, we borrowed some money from family. Like, I mean, when I say some money, like the amount of money it actually costs to open a spa is so much. And I think we opened the whole spa with $50,000, and like 20,000 of that was like on Peter's credit card.
Oh,
and
wow.
It was crazy, but we also pretended like we had all these rooms that we couldn't afford to even put massage tables in. So we just closed the doors. We're just like, nothing happening back there. It was like so funny. So it happened over time to like build it to what it is now, because it was a really big space and we didn't have the money to build it all out. So we built out what we could and just added as we could. In the first year, my business partner, who's also a massage therapist, and I did all the massages, except when we had parties come in, then we'd call all of our friends.
Wow.
We did all of the massages. Peter did all the acupuncture. We answered the phone. We cleaned, like I did everything.
The two of you.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
And then we would like trade, like we had friends who would, like we had this friend, Steve, who would come and like clean foot baths in exchange for a massage. So we'd be like, please come do foot baths. And then we'd give him a massage. I mean, we just had no money. So we had to do everything tight. And that was really, it taught me a lot about, I was always a really hard worker, but it became like when you're working for something that you love so much, it's so different. You're just like, I have a vision. Unfortunately, my business partner did not have that same vision. So about a year into it, I bought her half of the business, which was great because then I was able to expand and we put in saunas and spas and we made it like a real spa then, which was awesome. And then Peter became my business partner about a year after that. Really great. So that's when Peter and I started really co-owning the spa together.
And that's probably about the time that I met you, right?
Yeah.
So you want to tell the story of how this is funny.
Didn't we meet at a bachelor party? I feel like that's where we met.
Yeah, it was a bachelor party, but we were sitting in this room to learn, to go through the training for skydiving.
To go skydiving.
Yeah. So we went through the whole training, and then it was too cloudy, so we didn't get to go skydiving. But I remember
we didn't go skydiving that day.
We didn't. No, they didn't let us go. What's that?
We went back and went skydiving though.
I went back and went skydiving a different time for sure, but yeah, I'm sure that you did too, right?
Yeah, I thought about that group. I'm like, I don't remember things very well, but I do remember meeting you while skydiving, but apparently not actually skydiving.
Right? Yeah, we weren't flying down like, hey, Brianna, woo! No, but I thought it was funny because there was kind of this weird energy. Some people were nervous and some people were just celebratory because we were doing the bachelor party thing, but. It's interesting too, a bachelor party, but we're skydiving. But I remember you telling me about the spa and saying, I kind of had a hard time with the designer that I had working on the website. And that was our first sort of connection, but we had dear mutual friends, and Ryan and Forrest and Gabi and so, and Chris O'Connor. So hi to all those guys if they're able to see. But I remember that feeling, the energy that you talked about the first time we talked, you had this vibrance or this vibration. When you walk into a room, it's really special. There are a handful of people I've met in my life that you walk into the room, the energy changes. Sometimes, people will walk into a room and the energy changes for the worst, but that is not your case, right?
Thanks for clarifying that.
Yeah, well, in the current state of affairs, but I knew, this is somebody that I need to be around. It's a really great thing that you're in the position you're in to be able to sort of help guide people towards happiness and wellness. And I don't want to, derail your story. I just think that was the first time that I felt, wow, this person is so much deeper than a lot of people I meet, right? In the music business, you don't get past the superficial very often, right? There, you see somebody for a short time and then it's just on to the next. You never get into deep conversation. But the first couple of times I talked to you, you went deep fast. You were just, it was great. And I've found that I don't have great boundaries. So when I go deep fast, I kind of open myself up to everybody, heart on my sleeve, and it's kind of bitten me a handful of times, because my boundaries were a little too porous. But something I'm working on, at the half century mark. So let's go back now. So you opened the spa and the saunas, and Peter's helped you. He's become your business partner, and you've expanded. Those rooms are all full now, and he's got the apothecary as part of the spa, right? And did you feel at that point that your vision then expanded to want to take it one step further, to open another spa? I think you bought the Clearing Cafe shortly after that, right? Or built it?
Yeah, I mean, we actually just opened it was in that antique store. Remember that antique store?
I do. That's right.
We did the antique store into a cafe. It's interesting. People often ask me, like, has this been your big vision all along? And I'm like, no, it just really hasn't been. Like, my big vision at that time was to have a spa that made me money. I wanted to have a beautiful spa that treated people well, that everyone loved to be at, that I could sustain my life on. That was like the big vision. And it just changes, you accomplish something and then you're like, well, what do I want to do now? And well, I wanted to have a baby. And so got pregnant with that darling Sabina. And I knew I couldn't bring her to the spa because you can't bring babies in a spa.
Right.
And I also knew I did not want to be away from her ever. Okay. And so I decided to open a cafe because that's the most normal thing to do while you're really pregnant is to open a cafe for your baby to come to work with you.
Yeah. No
sense at all. Right. But it was a beautiful cafe and we got an office that she could be in. Then I could manage the spa from the office in the cafe and have my baby with me. It was actually a pretty good situation. And so that was why we opened the Clearing Cafe. And it was, I'm not actually a food person. I mean, I like eating, but I'm not like an amazing cook or anything. So it wasn't really you actually have to be really in love with that industry to be able to be in that industry. So it was good and I'm glad we did it, but I was also happy when we sold it, which we sold it so that we could open a spot in the airport.
Right.
So, and that really wasn't something I went out seeking either. They came to me and said, would you like to make a proposal? And I thought they were only asking us. I thought, oh, they really want us. Not the case. They asked everybody. Okay. I'm pretty sure. And then I found, but then it got the thought in my head. And then I was like, I have to do this now because somebody gave me the idea. And I can kind of get a little attached. And so I was like, this has to happen. So we got the proposal. We opened a spot in the airport. And that was when I really feel like, I know I had already opened 2 real businesses, but that's when I felt like, oh, this is like big kid businesses. Right. I'm an adult now. There are rules, federal laws I have to follow. I was like,
I remember so many restrictions and everything that you had to do to just get that sort of certification, right? To in the C concourse there, which I see every time I go by. I love it. It feels like home, So, yeah. And how much different was that from the other spa in terms of, becoming sustainable, right? Where you actually were making a decent income from it. Was it busy right away?
No.
Okay.
I mean, Kevin, you don't understand. I always think everything's going to be so much easier than it ever is. It's like that part of me that's a very positive person also is like a ridiculous optimist. It gets me in major trouble. So I thought it was just going to be great from the beginning. We'd just be so busy, we'd make so much money. Not the case at all. I mean, you can't control the flow of business at an airport.
Right.
Like there just is the number of people that there is. So like right now, there's nobody.
Right.
So when that happens, there's nothing we can do about it. Like our other businesses, we have more control over. Like, what do you do if there's not enough people? You can market, you can reach out, you can call your clients. But if people aren't flying, they're just not flying. And so it was a new learning, like about not just, I would always thought like, oh, it's just a flow in, right? And then I really had to start looking at like, oh, now it's a time management and expense management game.
Okay.
So it was a whole new learning.
You know, it's funny that you mentioned that because you talked about business partners and people that didn't have the same vision as you. It's really hard to open several sort of franchise locations where people might have the same vision, the same work ethic, the same ideals. I know personally when I've had like subcontractors or somebody working for me, it's really difficult to get somebody that will work on weekends or work on holidays, that has the desire to please the people on the end, to be of service, right? And so third business opening up in the airport, I know that you had good management. I remember when you opened up, you had some really good management and great therapists out there. It was crazy how you could go from this crazy bustling time in the airport concourse to walk into one of those rooms and have complete sound isolation, be able to have this wonderful massage and shut out the world for a minute when it's chaotic, when you're traveling, and or get a foot bath and just let the world slip away for a bit, which is kind of what I feel like your online presence is right now. You've got and we can, again, I derailed your story a little bit, but there's some magic to what you present. And so now that part's done, you got the airport opened up, and then it's time to, right? It makes logical sense to just, now that you're raising a family, to open up another location in Boulder, right? So, yeah.
Totally.
How did that happen? How did that get started?
Well, Peter wanted to move away from Portland. He was like real sick of the rain, and it took him many years to convince me, but eventually I was like, fine. So we moved to Boulder actually without the plan of opening a spa.
Okay.
And I said, I'm not going to open another spa. So I don't know what you're going to do for work, but I'm not opening another spa. And then I think the first week that we lived here, I was having coffee with my friend Aiden. And we were having coffee shop at this little coffee shop that I love so much. We had visited several times. And I had always said, if I was going to open a spa, it would have to be like here. And besides that, I'm not opening anywhere. So I meet him at the coffee shop. I'm telling him this story. Like, I was like, oh, if I wanted to open a coffee shop, it would be like, as another spot, it would have to be like here. And then he's like, well, like that spot, it was like right next door, just went up for lease, like the day before. I was like, damn it, I guess I'm opening another spot.
Oh, man. Yeah, there's
no
chance. Just open it up for you.
Yeah, it was a lot of work.
But you opened it shortly after you moved. I couldn't believe, like, you had just finished the move when you were starting construction, right? I mean, you did a lot of construction there to build this thing. It wasn't like you walked into a space and just slapped a Dragon Tree sign on. It was really just building it from the ground up, right?
Yeah, I mean, it was like a Tibetan store, like spiritual store beforehand. And so it was just a retail space. And so we had to build everything. It was a lot of work. It's crazy. But now it's open, and I am really great. Like, I go in there and I love every time I open a spa, Kevin, you know what my main goal is? I don't want to be the person painting these damn walls.
Oh,
that
yeah.
is like, if I ever open a spa where I don't have to paint the walls, I will feel like I am actually successful.
Nice.
But it has yet to happen. At every spa, I end up being the one painting the damn walls.
Oh.
So, it was another one of those experiences. And I was like, okay, maybe. But the thing about going into them now is I'm like, I painted these walls, this is my blood, sweat, and tears in here. And I loved it, and I love them. So it's a good thing in a way.
Honestly, I think there has to be something that goes into that. When you put that energy in, it's almost like you're embedding that energy in the physical space, right?
Yeah.
I every time I look at the walls in my place right now, Jen Rankin's watching, I think she painted those walls, and they have her blood, sweat, and tears in them. So I do see that you've probably sort of enhanced just the physical space and the vibe just by spending the extra time, even if it's something you didn't like, and honestly doing things that you don't like and pushing your way through is kind of what leads into a lot of your online discussions, right? That overcoming adversity, and right now there are so many things that people don't want to do. Like you see people that are not wanting to wear a mask, because they're tired of it or they feel like their rights are being imposed on. But you see that people that push through something that's uncomfortable, no matter what it is, as long as it's for the betterment of themselves or for society or whatever, positive comes from the other side, right? So you push through, you got those walls painted, you built it with Brianna's artistic eye, and when you opened, how was Boulder compared to Portland in terms of bringing audience or customers in?
Well, as I said, I always think everything's going to be easier than it is. And that was no exception. I definitely thought it was going to be easier than it was because I was like, oh, I've done this before. I've done this twice. I know how to market. I know how to get our name out. And yet we had no brand awareness, right? Because people in Boulder didn't know about our spas in Portland.
Sure.
So it's really kind of starting off at square one again. And then it's, making all those relationships and really making sure that our customers love us and that they know we love them, and, really infusing the culture of the spa with that too. Because one of the things that has happened in Portland, and it's still, I would say, stronger in Portland, though it's getting there in Boulder, is that that culture has been so built. We're here to love on our clients, treat them well. This is the 100% the vibe. And, some people don't like it. They're like, I just want to come in and massage somebody and leave. I'm like, not the place for you then, right? That's just not right for you. And that's also okay. But because we infused it in the culture, they hold that culture, right? And then new people come and they get absorbed into the culture. But here we had to start all over again to say oh, right, it takes time and energy to really infuse that energy into a company culture. Even if it's already happening somewhere else, you still have to do it again at that location. And so I noticed just there was some joy in doing that for me, actually, and also some work,
Sure.
both. And then, getting it busy enough and all those things.
Having to pay the bills and
how to pay the bills, and also rent in Boulder is so much more than Portland.
Wow, really?
Yeah.
It's hard to imagine, but I believe it. It's interesting that you say that it takes time and effort to build that into the company culture, but it seems like it's the same sort of thing in the building of your self-awareness and some of the skills that you teach. And I'd love to get into that a little bit, because I'll tell you from my experience, some altering things that just to me in the last few months, to be honest with you. The pandemic certainly brought some of that out. And over the last decade, I think a lot of things entered my life that changed me, but it took me a long time to internalize that stuff and to become self-aware. You mentioned after your accident that you realized that tomorrow is never promised, that you have to live for today. It helps you avoid taking things for granted, right? Now, for me, I thought I used every ounce of every day, but I recognized I took a lot of stuff for granted. And I got hit by a tidal wave of awareness a few months ago. It was like this light went off, and it was daunting because I realized that I had a lot of work to do. Over the last few years, I've been trying to become more present and meditate. And it was so difficult to quiet my mind. And it takes so much practice, right? And so using guided meditation versus being able to meditate on your own was certainly a gateway for me. You have a wonderful way of introducing stillness and calmness in your communication. I'm wondering if you've worked with people one-on-one that have fought that and resisted it, um, and then how you help people overcome that. Do you mind kind of sharing some of that?
Yeah. I mean, most people that come to me aren't, they want it, even if they're fighting it, they're not at least fighting me. So that's actually a
Right.
really good first step. Like, people have to be willing. But I think that there tends to be there, especially at the beginning, what we're bumping up against is a lot of stuff that might actually just need to get managed, right? So this is something that I don't think gets talked about that much. We're just like, just sit down and quiet your mind. And you sit down and then you're like, oh, what about this thing? And what about this thing? And what about this thing? And actually, we just sometimes have a lot of loose ends that our awareness is actually trying to point us towards. Like, you have some mess. You're like a little messy. And so what I also often encourage people who are just beginning to meditate to do is to actually have two things. One is like a 5-minute close your eyes and do your thinking that you need to do, because that's going to happen anyway. So if you just have 5 minutes, you're just going to think. So think and have like a piece of paper so that you can make notes like, oh, I do need to have that conversation and I do need to resolve that thing. And these are actually real life things. So rather than trying to transcend them, let's just like be honest. Like, yeah, you have some stuff to do, like all of us.
Yeah.
So taking a moment to do that, number 5, and then saying, okay, now I'm going to go into meditation. And anything that comes now, I can just actually let float by. Because I know that tomorrow when I sit here again, I'm going to have 5 minutes to get that down again, and it will come back if it was important. Okay. So when we do this practice of like, oh yeah, I give my mind attention first, it helps a lot. Then when we go into the second part, we can be like, just let it drift through and start to actually clear out, because it will still come during that time, but at least you won't be so worried about those specific things that maybe you actually have forgotten. And I think that is something that a lot of people don't voice, that we as a culture have messed some things up that we need to manage as humans. And so they come through, and then it's good to clear out.
Do you encourage people to write? You talked about that first 5 minutes where you're kind of prioritizing the things that are the loose ends that are right at the surface, right? So, man, I've got these bills to pay, and I got to take care of the kids, and I make sure that I get the cat food. Like all of those things, those priorities, those priority lists that we make, the to-do list, the checkbox list. Do you encourage people to kind of write that down to just expel it from your psyche at first, or how involved is writing for you when you recommend sort of stillness with people?
Well, especially if this is the case for them, very. I mean, you can't keep it in your head, right? It's just going to come right back. And so in that first 5 minutes, if you just write notes, then it comes out. And then if you start to really create a practice for yourself in your life where you're tracking your life a little bit better, like using a planner, making sure that you have kind of your dots, your I's dotted and your T's crossed, it helps those thoughts not come quite as much. I know this is like a super practical, not that spiritual approach, but the fact is that most people need this. And if we don't talk about it, most people will then just sit down and have a closed-eyed thinking session anyway.
Right. You just had a video the other day that you talked about letting go, about releasing things. And again, one of my biggest challenges is hanging on to the past. And I recognize that, if my focus, I don't make New Year's resolutions. I have things that I want to work on today. A goal of mine was to really become present, to let go of all of that stuff in the past. Guilt was a huge thing for me, right? Guilt and regret. And I realized how unhealthy it was. I can regret some decisions I made or some actions that I did that may have hurt someone, and learn from those so that I don't do them again. But I found myself spiraling, wallowing in it, letting it fester. You mentioned festering and having this digestion, as part of this plan. So rather than me trying to explain it, do you want to talk a little bit about that concept or the ideas to go into being able to release and let go of whatever it is that's sort of haunting us?
Yeah. I mean, I think that, you don't have to look far to see people being like, just let it go.
Right.
And I'm like, how? Like the main question that everyone then says is like, how? Like,
Right.
just like, I would have just let it go if I could have just let it go, right? Thank you for
Easier
the
said than
fucking
done.
tip, right? You're like, that's not that helpful.
Right.
And so one of the things I have really come to recognize is that the best way to release something is through awareness, like actually noticing what's actually there and being with it. Like, what is hurting there? What is actually happening there? So often we're just like, oh, like, don't. Like, it's kind of like a little kid's hand. We're just like slapping it away constantly. Like, don't touch that. That's like the hot oven of guilt, or the hot oven of shame, or the hot oven of I fucked it up. Right. And so we are like slapping our hands away, like, don't touch it, when we really actually need to touch it. We need to be like, yeah, this is true. And there has to be a digestion of it. And I really believe that the digestion of it has to happen through love.
Okay.
So can we bring this aspect of ourselves, version of ourselves, or whatever it is, if it happened with somebody else, like, can we bring them into our heart with love and to say, I can love here. It doesn't have to be, it was perfect, or it wasn't actually wrong, or even like that we have to condone the behavior. I always get condone and condemn confused.
Sure.
Condone the behavior. It just simply means that we can forgive. Like, can we forgive? Can we love in that place?
Yeah.
Because love is like the great like digester. It can actually infuse every single thing, and then it opens it up so that it can really be digested through your system, which I think is actually best done through movement. That's, I mean, for me, maybe for you, it's music though. I would say music is a form of movement, but to like hold on to whatever it is, really feeling it, let it be in love, and then allow it to move, especially creatively. So for me, that's always dance. Okay. I'm like, here it is. I'm struggling with it. Oh, I feel you. I love you. And then I move into movement. How do I dance this through my actual body with the intention that I'm letting it go into the atmosphere, into the earth, so that it can be even further digested.
Jen points out in the chat here, letting go is easier said than done. And it's just like you said, when somebody tells you, just let it go. A lot of times, people hang on to really traumatic experiences in their life, and maybe the manifestation of other sort of ailments sort of have appeared because maybe the traumatic thing happened 35 years ago, right? And you held on to those things, and like you said, maybe you suppressed some of those memories, and it was too difficult at that point to be able to live with it, to love it, right? So you had to just suppress it, and you pushed it away, and what that did was it did fester, right? And those things become, I think, more damaging. I mentioned my self-awareness sort of awakening a few months ago. I didn't realize a lot that were damaging to other people, and I, in my mind, I think I justified my behaviors and really felt like, I've always been a nice guy, a good guy that helps people out, until I really was sort of made aware. This awareness came up that showed me, your behavior affected these people in really negative ways. To me, it was overwhelming. It was more than daunting. It was overwhelming for me to realize that I kind of had to go way back. I talked about those decades, right? To go to find the source of those things and process them in a way that I could somehow make amends, right? I could make some things right. And so I couldn't let them go. For me, I hung on to them because I felt like my responsibility and my ownership of, and being accountable for the pain that I caused. And in this sort of process of apologizing and trying to make things right, it almost felt like it was making it worse in some ways, because I wasn't able to internalize that stuff and love it first and find ways to digest it. I was just spitting out my sort of accountability, So
like, fix this for me.
Yeah, well, yeah, and not asking for that, just hoping that by communicating it, it would somehow work its way out, right? And
Right.
so, again, easier said than done. If I wanted to hang on to that stuff in a way that I could find some love from what I saw really causing pain, and then expressing that through movement, you're right. On stage, playing drums, that is where I have found that my spirit sort of gets recharged. And it's what's been difficult with the pandemic, right? It's been a year now, and it's really, I think, clouded my spirit. It's really, poured water on the coals of my spirit. But there have to be ways to deal with that. And so I'm trying to find that. Some of that's through this show, through the podcast and talking to people and expressing, genuine concern for their businesses or excitement about what they're doing. And you and I have been friends for a long time. I've had a lot of appreciation for what you've done. And I wanted you to be able to share it because everything I watch from you is geared towards making people better, making people feel better, maybe making people want to be better. I think ultimately everybody wants to feel better, but some people hang on to that stuff that makes us feel bad. For me, I wallowed in that misery. I really, I hung on to my depression. I don't know what that payoff was. I'm still trying to figure that out. But I know that you've talked to a lot of people that have probably been in the same spot, right, where they've found ways to get a payoff from living in the misery. How do you just because again, it's not your responsibility to fix those people, but it's when people can find it in themselves. Do you help people sort of locate where that payoff is and how to transcend beyond that?
Yeah. There's a lot of kind of angles I might take with an individual depending on what was going on and how things arose. But one of the things I feel like is really brilliant is Eckhart Tolle's idea about the pain body, of like how our pain bodies, if we think of them as an entity that is just around us and that it wants to be fed, it actually enjoys pain. And we can see this. People like doom scroll, they want to look for the bad news, they want to wallow in it, they want to start fights. I mean, even if you would be like, are you starting a fight with me? No, I'm not starting a fight with you. You're definitely starting a fight with me.
Yeah.
And I notice for myself, like my pain body, especially after I do a lot of healing work and clearing work, my pain body is so hungry. I'll like go do like some transcendental like experience in my room. I'm like, it feels so good. And I come downstairs and Peter left the cupboard door open. I'm like, fuck you. I'm like, no. Like my pain body is so hungry right now because it just got emptied out, right? So really, it's about awareness. It has to be just an awareness game. And sometimes when we personify it, like this is a thing, right? Rather than feeling like, what's wrong with me? To be like, my pain body is hungry. And I'm going to have to say, I'm sorry, pain body, you don't get anything right now. Like, and we really can learn, but we have to actually stop some of our behaviors. We have to stop doing the things that we know make us feel worse. For a lot of people, that's like drinking alcohol. Drinking
Right.
alcohol is something that makes almost everyone feel worse in the long run. And yet we're like, I'm going to do it anyway. You're like,
Yeah.
okay, well, you have to just recognize the pattern and say, what are you going to choose? Right. So that's one, I think awareness of our pain body is so, so helpful. And then another is like, why do you feel so safe? Why is that what makes you feel safe right now? Because I think a lot of people, there is safety either because they don't want to be like taken away from their communities, and their community is centered around pain and struggle and complaining and all those things. And so it's how they connect. And so it feels safe, right? We don't want to lose our communities. We don't want to be pushed out. And so that's one reason, like, why is it making you feel safe? What is it that you're getting out of it? And to really start to, without any blame, and to be like, when we go into it with like, I'm going to blame you for everything that you do, Kevin, I'm going to blame you for everything you do, Brianna, then it's really hard to see it with an open heart and open eyes. We just have to be like, oh, you're choosing, why are you choosing that? And I see that even for myself. I'll be like hanging out with friends and I notice I'm like complaining about some random thing, and I can hear myself and I can be like, Brianna, you're complaining to try to create connection with these people. Choose different.
Right.
Choose a different connection point. They're humans. They have kids. Talk about their kids. Like, you have, be creative in your way of connecting. And when I do that, I'm like, oh, right. And so I think that that's another one. And then I also think that our bodies just hold so much. We have to move our bodies, not even just for like our physical health, but for our mental health. It really, things get stuck in our bodies. And it is real, like we do even if we do all the rest of those things, awareness, and we talk about mind and body, if we are like, if it's festering in our body and we're not moving it through, then it's very hard to fix it with just our minds alone. So I often think like music, meditation, and movement are my 3 things I go to a lot when people are stuck in a place. I'm like, those are things that we all need. I mean, even if people don't think they need music, they do.
I'm with you. I love that. I think, it's kind of like water, air, like food, just the basic things that we need. Right now, with the pandemic happening, you can see that there's a lot more unhappiness in the world because, people they're not getting to do what they used to do. Their livelihoods are affected. Their businesses are affected. Depression is at an all-time high for sure. And a lot of that probably has to do with some of this physical movement that you talked about. They're not going out to a job, or they're not going out and interacting with their friends. They're not, they're not doing these activities. I know from my own experience, I had some surgery and I was laid up. And I know that as I laid there, my mind would sort of fester and get into those places where I didn't do any of those things that you just talked about, and the 3 M's were not present in there. And instead, my pain body was being fed physically and, like emotionally and, metaphorically. So when you take people and you say, if you're stuck and these are the 3 things that we're going to start with, do you find where the positive sides of their bodies are nurtured by the certain kind of music? I mean, obviously you're not saying, here's the Brianna playlist, this is what's going to get you going, right? So do you do sort of like an investigation or an interview sort of to find out where people's like their ideal states are at?
I mean, I really usually just trust people to find that on their own. Like most people know what they want to listen to, how that works for them. But I do think that, pushing ourselves to move in a way that isn't planned, actually allowing our bodies to lead the way. So rather than being like, I'm going to go do an exercise class where I just like follow somebody, which I'm not like, there's nothing wrong with that. I do this all the time. But that's one way of moving our bodies, but it isn't actually allowing our bodies to just be in charge and like match music and just like actually like if we can be in our bodies and be like, what would it feel like to just release this? What would that look like? People are so afraid of looking stupid in their bodies. It's like such a major fear. And I just feel like, well, then just turn off the damn lights. Like, it doesn't matter what it looks like. And we have, like, our bodies are so wise and they will show us how to untangle something, but we have to be willing to really be present with like, oh, this kind of hurts. Oh, I want to do this and I want to do that. And I want to, and if you were out in the street, people would probably be like, oh, what's wrong with Kevin today? But that's okay. Our bodies really do have this innate wisdom in them, but we have to be present to be able to allow it to come through. And so I think, I lead people when I do group things a lot through movement practices that that's like leading them, like listen to your body, listen to your body, listen to your body. Because it really makes a huge difference.
You repeated yourself 3 times because that's kind of that reinforcement, right? That's kind of the practicing thing. In order to master anything, we have to practice, right? For somebody, me, who's not accustomed to wanting to do good things for me, it's self-care is my first instinct is to think, how selfish, right? Because I have to do something for somebody else. I've been thinking a lot about that. That self-care is sort of a thing right now that has become kind of a buzzword, but I think there is some recognition that the old adage of you can't save somebody else without putting your own oxygen mask on first, right? There is certainly legitimacy behind that thought, right? That as a parent, right? There's no way that we can save our kids if we're in the crazy mindset ourselves. And you also mentioned willingness, being willing to move our bodies and being willing to look dumb, even if the lights, with the lights on or off. The willingness is a key thing. And I know for me, changes didn't really happen until I was willing, until I was receptive to allowing change. And that's a hard thing to teach somebody, especially somebody stubborn like me, right?
Yeah. There's nothing you can do. Actually, like I have forever, people are always like, will you see my husband? Will you see my wife? Will you blah, blah, blah? I'm like, if they're willing, of course, right. I would help anybody who's willing. But I am not here to I'm not here to try to rip you across the line, kicking and screaming. Like it just doesn't work. You have to be willing. And everyone finds their willingness in a different way. Unfortunately, many people find it when things get really bad.
Yeah. It's, we don't want to all have a car accident with a broken neck and to force us to recognize how important, the today is. I'm going to lighten the mood for a second because I have
I'm going to turn on my light. One second.
Sure. Folks, while she's doing that, I want to make sure that you know that everything that we've been talking about sort of gets, underlined in the BRIANABORTEN.com website. Brianna talks about her practice and her spirituality, the sort of mindfulness exercises that we're kind of talking about. She goes in great depth discussing this and kind of conveying it in a way that makes a lot more sense than if I were to explain it, for sure. I love the peacefulness on the website. You enter the site and this flowing water, and you are in a state of bliss when you see that entrance. It's kind of the way the dragon tree is when you walk in. We talked about the willingness and wanting a change. It's tough if somebody doesn't have the incentive. They don't see what the payoff is going to be, right? So they're going to be willing if they can say, well, I want to feel like that, right? If they can see that you found a state of serenity and they know that you've done it doing X, Y, and Z, chances are they're going to at least be willing to entertain the thought that I'm going to try X, Y, and Z to see if I can get the same results, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's that way with anything out there, right? We see, somebody that we admire, or we respect, we revere because they've accomplished something in the world, or they've attained something, and or they just embody something that we desire. And so if you see what they're doing and they're willing to share that, then I think it's a really important thing to take notice and also be willing to try those things out to get those results. So I want people to go to BRIANABORTEN.com so you can see more of what we're talking about. Now, on the show every so often, I usually do this with musicians, but I consider you an artist of all kinds, right? So I ask people about their guilty pleasures, right? So I really love getting, say, a famous metal musician, and he acknowledges that he loves disco secretly, right? And it's happened here on the show.
That's awesome.
Our friends, people that know, the guru that is Brianna Borten, Brianna, who she admit mistakes. Tell me about a guilty pleasure that somebody might be surprised about you.
I'm trying to think of what my guilty pleasures are. I'm all the pleasures I can think of right now are all things I'm like, yes, everyone should do this, like taking baths and meditating and going on hikes. I'll tell you a guilty pleasure of mine. I love the game Hue. Have you ever played the game Hue?
I've never heard it.
I'm not that much of a video game player, but on my phone, when my guilty pleasure is when I'm I just need a break, I play Hue. It is so much fun. And Peter will be like, long day, huh? Because I'm I'm just playing Hue for a minute. It's a really fun game. You should look it up. It's all about, you would love it probably. It's colors, and you have to arrange all the blocks so that they're in a color gradient. Oh. But it gets really very minute in the color differences, and you have to match them up. Oh. It's really fun.
That sounds like it would really force you to become present too, right? Yeah. Your mind, all those things you talked about, those frayed edges, all those things kind of get condensed down to just the focal point of getting the color gradient. Boy,
So fun.
I love that. That is a surprise because, we think about you being a go-getter and just going all the time. And I can't imagine Brianna just taking time for herself to sit down and play a game. Somebody wants to say hi. Sorry, one sec. Edgar Allan Pug says he wants more attention. So Edgar, that's Brianna right there. Hello. Oh, yeah. Who's that? Yeah, he's been at my feet and kind of pawing me. So I think he just wanted attention. So
cute.
Edgar. So I think knowing that that's your guilty pleasure and allowing yourself that opportunity to kind of unwind, that's great because, sometimes people talk about food, you're really conscious about the things that you put in your body. And, sometimes, it's great to think, I wonder if Brianna ever eats Twinkies, right? Just something like that, just where you're, 99% of the time, you're really conscious about great things you put in your body. And then you have kind of a, man, well, I should say, this is somebody who's an emotional eater, right? I am that guy.
You're like, what's your emotional eating food, Brianna?
Yeah. Do you have one?
I'm not really much of an emotional eater. And I would say if like my digestive system and health didn't care, I would just eat donuts. Like I love donuts so much. Like they're my favorite thing to actually like the taste. I'm like, oh, so good. But I have like my body is just set up in such a way that if I ate something like that, I would feel so bad. I would
physically and emotionally.
Physically,
okay.
Like really just physically so bad that I wouldn't do it. So I'm like, I have an idea of what that would look like, but I don't do it because I would feel not just bad for a minute. It's like when I eat things like that, I feel bad for a day. Oh. So it would be like such a bad idea for me.
What a gift. That's great.
It is a gift in a lot of ways. Peter has often said to me, I wish I had your reaction to gluten and dairy. And because he's like, he doesn't have any reaction to it. And so he's just like, why would I not eat that? It's delicious. So he has to mentally know, like, this isn't so good for me to eat all the time and then not eat it all the time. For me, I'm like, if I ate that, I will not, my whole system rejects it. So yeah, that it doesn't really work out very well for me. But I do, like, when I do have like my guilty pleasures, I really love gluten-free licorice.
Oh,
so good.
Okay, what flavor?
Black.
Oh yeah, nah.
Not for you.
Nah, I know a lot of people love it, but for me, that's just one of the very few things that I just don't like.
My mom always loved it when I was little, so I think that there's like some association of being like in the car going to the lake and my mom having black licorice, and it has like a comforting feeling too.
Yeah, takes you back to times that were simpler, right?
Yeah.
I didn't want to take more of your time, but I do have a question that I think a lot of people might be able to relate to about finding time for your relationship with your partner. Mm-hmm. Because you're a business owner that owns several businesses and you're a really attentive and active mom. I love how, like your, internal side. How do you find time to really make value in your relationship, to show value? Or do you?
It's an interesting, I do. I think part of it, and I know that this might sound oversimplistic and I'll get into more details, but I just really love the shit out of Peter. Yeah. So it doesn't feel like, it's like another thing on my to-do list. It comes from like a genuine desire. Like, I'm like, I want to be with you as much as humanly possible. And when I'm with you, I want you to know that I'm loving you. Mm. And I'm trying to constantly hook him up with the best possible partnership that he could experience in his life. And I learned that from watching him, because he's always doing this for me. So I'm actually not the better person here. He is definitely. And that feeling though, of like, any moment I can, I'm trying to, like, I know his love language is touch. And so like I'll walk into the kitchen in the morning and I just try to like touch his whole body and be like, I love you so much, like every part of you. And, just remembering that when we know somebody's love language, it's easier. We don't always have a huge amount of time. So concentrating on that love language first to make sure that that's expressed every single day. And then we can open it up to other ways of expressing love. But I think that that, and then when I find that we haven't had enough one-on-one time together, I just like, I get to a place where I'm just like, no more. Like no more anything else. Like everything else has to be canceled. We can't see friends. I'm not doing anything else. Our kids are going to get put in front of a movie and I just need to be able to like talk with you and get to really be with you. And so I think I have a low threshold. I have a low threshold for not having Peter time. And so it comes through in our life. And it's almost like being like, how do you have time to breathe? I'm like, well, because if I don't, I'll die.
Right.
So you just make it happen.
I love it. Man, there's so much wisdom there. I'm sure a lot of that has been it is developed, right? I mean, the love has always been there, but nurturing that and keeping the relationship healthy, and it's a really healthy way to approach your partner. Is that him coming in the room?
That's Peter coming in the room.
Can I say hi to Peter? I miss him.
I'm having an interview with Kevin.
Kevin Rankin.
Hi, buddy. How you doing?
Good. How are you?
I'm well. Hey, this is Edgar Allan Pug. Edgar, there's Peter. Yeah.
Hi, Edgar Allan Pug.
Oh man, I'm
dark soul.
This is the sweetest dog you've ever met. I'm telling you, he's the best. He saved my spirit. I
know all about the unconditional love we share with animals. They're like, I'm sure we've got alpacas, chickens, dogs, cats. It's like a menagerie, but it's awesome.
I would love to come visit your farm sometime. I really would.
We'd love to have you.
I think alpacas have a different energy too. There's one picture that you posted, Brianna, this summer that blew my mind of this connection that you had like your head up against the alpaca and it was loving on you. And oh my God, it was like the most emotionally connected animal human picture I think I've seen. It was beautiful. You should blow that up, have it framed, and have it on your wall. That was a really impressive one. So,
I thought you were going to say put it in the alpaca's barn. I was thinking.
Yeah, I think they know, right? They know. But Peter, we kind of just covered how important it was to show value and sort of time and energy into relationships. I'm so happy to see what you guys have created together. I really am, man. Mm-hmm. I miss you both. I think we shared a lot of wonderful ideas and wisdom. Brianna just gave, a lifetime of information in a short amount of time. But I want you to both to know that I have felt inspired by you. I really think that you've really made your world and surrounding world a lot better place. And so I commend you. I love you. I respect and admire you. And I miss you.
How much we miss you too. I feel like it doesn't matter how much time has passed. Whenever I see your picture or a post of yours or whatever, I always think fondly of you. And Brianna and I have probably said to each other like a dozen times over the years, Kevin Rankin, when you're in his presence, you feel like you're the only person in the world. You feel like you have his undivided attention. His total heart is open to you. It's like, that's why, you'll post something and it's like, oh, there's 5 million likes of Kevin just like posting a picture of himself playing the drums or whatever. And it's like, well, of course you've got 5 million likes. Everybody who knows you is like, oh, that guy's, clearly has jewels in your heart. And
okay.
So thank you for being in our life.
I'm going to accept that, but I'm going to tell you, the one conversation that Brianna had a little bit ago was recognizing that I have very porous boundaries. While I may have sort of given you the feeling like you were the only person in the room, I didn't show that kind of value to my partners in the past. I shared so much of myself and kind of selfishly fed off the attention of others that it was detrimental to my relationships. And it was one of those things that just woke me up a few months ago, where I recognized, wow, that was really damaging and unhealthy. And so recognizing it now is great, because some people never get there, but it's a daunting thing to think, wow, you know what? I did a lot of damage and I don't ever want to do that again. And, I've had,
see it.
I'm grateful that I could be fully present with some people. Being fully present as often as I possibly can is a super goal of mine. I talked about being present, being mindful of every moment and everyone is really, something that I just, I'm excited to focus on. I get a lot of that from your vlogging and your posts, Brianna. So as I've told people that are watching here, you can get it at brianaborten.com. And if you're anywhere in the Northwest or you're in Colorado, you got to go check out the Dragon Tree Spa, right? So I love you both.
Chair, so that's why I'm in this weird.
No, I won't make you hunch over it. I took way more time of Brianna's than I expected to, but I could talk to you guys all day. I love you. And please stay in touch, and let's share some positivity in this new year. We need it for sure. Country kind of needs a little bit of of us all banding together just to share love and kindness. And so you're starting it, and let's finish it, guys. So I see that Keith Parkhurst is there too, buddy. I'm glad to see you here. There's a lot of goodness. That guy too. A friend of mine is this drummer, percussion. He's got sort of he's got a saying for anything that happens in the world, and it just seems to be poignant and profound. And so I'm glad he's here to get some of the Brianna-isms. So, and
I'm going to have that you guys can have it, just you two sign off.
That's it. I mean, you know what? It's this is good to sign off together, and my partner and I are going to sign off as well. So Edgar, say goodbye. All right, and you guys, thank you so much, and thank you guys for watching. If you're watching this on YouTube, please subscribe to the channel. And as Brianna says on her channel, make sure that you smash the little bell there, subscribe and smash the bell, and you'll get notified of all the shows coming up. I've got some great ones coming up. So Lisa Schroeder, owner of Mother's Bistro, is coming up next week, as is Kyle.
Man, I haven't been to Mother's in way too long.
No, it's closed right now, of course, but when it reopens and you're back in Portland, make sure you patronize. And if you're here in Portland, make it happen too.
Best friend of my life.
Thank you so much, and I'll see you guys when it's sunny. I'll come out and see you in Colorado. Okay.
Sounds good.
I think we are playing Fiddler's Green again in August. So as long as the pandemic clears up.
Hope it does.
All right, guys. Thank you so much. And Keith, he says, thank you for sharing your light with us, Brianna. So yeah, you do. You are wonderful. Thanks, guys, for watching, and have a beautiful week.